Good afternoon and welcome to the Stockbridge Library Association's online poetry series. We are in year 3 of this poetry program that John Gillespie started, wonderfully bringing poetry into our lives at noon each Thursday afternoon. And John, I'm very happy to have you with us here today, and also delighted to have our poet Perry Nichols, whose birthday it is tomorrow. And I will turn the program over to the two of you. Thank you so much.
No, thanks a lot, Wendy. And I have to say this about Perry. This is his third time reading, but I think it's his. Teresa, I think Terry, I think you've watched like 60 shows. I don't know. You're like.
What I was going to say, I really appreciate what you two do. For me, it's really a nice break in the week, and you always have really good people. It's great.
Yeah.
Who cares
Fantastic.
if it's 1 or 2 or 10 people? It doesn't matter.
Yep. So let me talk about Perry. He is a recently retired English professor at SUNY Erie Community Club, awarded the 2008 SUNY Chancellor's Award for Scholarship and Creative Activities.
You could do the short version, John, if you want.
And Perry's going to turn 71 and we're done. No,
God help me.
That I think part of it is, we put it all, very, very lengthy bio. And Perry, I'm just glad to have you back. You're one of our, our favorite people here. And you've been, as I said, a loyal listener or follower from the beginning. So
thank you.
So
thank you.
Perry, let's start with our big question this year. What does inquiry mean to you?
Well, I'm thinking about it a lot when I listen to the other people, and I think my poems many times start out asking questions and hopefully lead to at least partial answers, not complete answers. I don't think any poems really do. So sometimes I start with a question, and sometimes one appears along the way, which is kind of cool, which I enjoy. To me, it's just like the conflicts in life. They become clearer if you can express them. And that's what poetry does to me. If I can express a problem, then I can think about it and I can understand it and I can decide how to move on. So inquiry for me is like asking the right questions. The problem is that one of the earlier poets in the session said, you can't let those questions paralyze you, stop you from writing, because you can get stuck, and I often do. So even if you can't come up with an immediate clear answer, you just have to go on and take the poem where it goes. Speaking about where it goes, what I usually do is I ask a question, then I let the malleability of language take me over to somewhere I didn't expect. That's the cool thing about poetry for me, when you end up not going somewhere you didn't expect. Surprise for me. When I hear a poet that surprises me in the end, that blows me away. So that I enjoy. And I use, for examples, the poets William Stafford and Lee Young Lee, who were always two of my greatest influence. Frost too, but we'll get to Frost later, because you can't beat Frost. Ornery old man, but you cannot beat Frost. So anyway, but William Stafford kind of likened fishing, or the idea of fishing, to or the idea of writing to fishing. So he said, he would say, I get up in the morning and I throw out the line and I put the bobber in. And if the bobber goes like this and moves, then I know I got something. And if I don't have something, then I move on to another time or another hole. It doesn't have to be that moment. So that always stuck with me with William Stafford, he's dead now, but he's a wonderful poet. And then Lee Young Lee likened writing his poetry to riding a horse. And that I thought was interesting enough to just read one little short passage from an interview by Leon Lee, where he talks about likening the poetry to horseback riding. You know, he said, what I want to achieve is that kind of recklessness where the poem is even ahead of you. It's like riding a horse that's a little too wild for you. So there's this tension between what you can do and what the horse decides is going to do. So that moment when the poem takes off on its own, that's it for me. That's why I write. So question
Yeah.
being, what is inquiry? I mean, I start with a question. Sometimes I answer it, sometimes I answer a different question. And that's okay too. I'll
So
let
if
you
there's
jump
another,
in
if
there.
there's another, yeah, if there's another question that arrives in your writing, do you ever go back to that original question, or you feel like that was just a prompt and you kind of just put it on the shelf?
That's a great question. You know, many times it ends up being just a prompt. You know, I don't care how you get to your end. It doesn't matter. If that prompt got you there, then great. But sometimes you can incorporate both of them if they're related, or sometimes it changes the poem. And then I actually have to go back, and Teresa talked a little bit about this last week. I have to go back and say, what is this poem really about? It started out being about the Civil War. It's not about the Civil War anymore, you know? So then you have to refigure and redo the poem, redo the title. Something has to change, but I don't care. Whatever gets you to write is fair game for me. And wherever you go with it is fair game for me. And as long as it makes some sense and is pretty clear and sounds good, because I'm really big on sound. You know, when people ask me what kind of poetry do you write, I usually say, I think it's a combination of narrative and lyric.
All
A
right.
story that people will like and understand and identify with, and it has to sound good, like a good song.
Yeah, nice. So do your poems tend to answer the questions, or to
Not
lead
always.
lead the reader down some path, or?
Might end up just, you know, like Frost, just leave you kind of hanging in the end.
Yeah,
So
that's nice.
I don't know. That's okay too. I mean, who has all the answers? Anybody here have all the answers? Because if you do, please tell me right now. So
I think we
I
live in a
certainly,
world. I think we live in a world where there's like a million questions, and I think
yeah.
right now there's about 3 answers, and I'm not sure
Oh,
any of them really work.
I don't feel like I have less answers now than ever. But what I did do for today is I tried to think about 3 kinds of poems that I write or that I've written. One, poetry about writing poetry and why you do it. And I know they always say, I see Mike's comment. And I know they always say, don't write about writing, but I do. I do. Because when you're writing about writing, you're not really writing about writing. You're writing about something else. So poems about writing and expressing conflicts. If you can express something, then you can understand what to do about it better. I mean, think about it. It's why we read and write, to learn and to understand things. At least that's what I do. So that's the first part. I have a couple poems kind of relating to that, and they're old poems. And then a couple relating to questioning my bilingual upbringing. You know, to me, it was odd. I don't know about you people, but you know, our rule was Greek in the house, English outside. That's it. You know, and it was a very split world. And so I always question, you know, was that a good or bad thing? And ultimately, I think I decided it was a good thing, because what I learned about languages, about learning, about studying, about reading, and all of that. But sometimes, let's face it, it's difficult to be a hyphenated American, especially today, probably worse today. But I can remember my father's voice saying, you know, when you go outside of the house, you go to school, English. We don't want them to think we're foreigners. And so that a lot of my poems are about that. And then the third piece that I broke it down into, I mean, I can go on and on. You don't want to hear all that, but it was about aging. You know, obviously it's on my mind. You know, tomorrow I'll be 70, and that's, you know, feels like a big one to me. Especially when you can't eat birthday cake because you've got a infected tooth, but you know,
Yeah.
that's aging too. So that's part of it too. And it's almost like, you know, I'm going to have some real lot of fun now, but then somebody stands up and says, "Oh, can't have too much fun. Better think about that." So somebody steps on it. But anyway, so I find myself thinking, you know, what now? And one previous poet in the series, because I wrote a lot of things down, said, is everything aligned in my life? And I often think about that. Is it? Not sure. And John asked, I think, the ultimate question way in the beginning. You probably don't believe that I remember this, but John asked, what don't I want to ask myself? And I thought, that's a cool question. That's a very cool question. I love that. So sometimes I've been writing lately and thinking about that. What is it I don't want to ask myself? So you know, where do you write from? God, you write from your head, your heart, from your experiences. But Teresa said last week, write from what you don't know. And I wrote that down. I thought, well, that's pretty good. So I got some poems about writing
Yeah,
poetry. And
start
some about
dive in on that
those.
first, dive in.
Okay. And
If you
these
want to go
these
1,
are
2,
actually my
3.
very, very first book called The River Review. But
Yeah.
I wrote about the writing process, and one is I'll turn this way a little bit so I can light myself. I know my glasses are glaring, but this is a William Stafford idea. Writing. It's like fishing, you say, as you sit waiting, mind cast far out to catch a nibble. After waking every morning before sunrise, anticipating bubbles that might rise to the surface. But sometimes nothing comes, and sometimes they feed all day with their thieving lips, and it almost hurts, like noticing the beauty of that near stunning woman who brushes close by you, tightly packed in ice, with her unlikely friend, and not having the freedom to stare for the sole purpose of recording her perfection for your imagined fans, to unhook the praise between your tightened lips. You pack up your gear, gather the day's excuses, buckets of empty ones. Water too cold, water too warm. She doesn't know what she's missing. You know what
Nice.
that's about, then you can tell me. But you know that kind of, when you go down, come on, you must know, guys, when you see this beautiful, beautiful woman, she's with this guy with his pants falling down and the backward hat, you go, come on, are you kidding? But anyway, I digress. This next one really has that horse idea in it, Li Young Lee. And it really, I think, talks about what a poem does. I always, when I first started writing, I started thinking, well, every poem has to really make this mark on everything and change something and be so damn important. And so what I do is when I get stuck in writing, I go back to form. I don't know why, but either a rhyming poem, rhyming couplets, a sonnet, something along those, and it gets me back on track to write. And so this one is not really a rhyming, but it's in very, very tight couplets. It's called form. I choose the clean order of couplets where there's little space for disengaged apologies. Maneuvering new land, you need to take your hand, place it on the reins where you feel most natural. Become brave enough to ride off into bare multiples of 2. Years ago in college, I fell in love with the typewriter's clacking, its seemingly endless corralling of revision. I used it to strip down borders, move through explanation and unnameable ache, past gaps youth could never quite grasp, not 400 or 400 years behind Whitman and Pound. I've learned serenity starts in humble pairings, the ability to accept at first the notion of connection, and that not every poem has to change the world.
Nice. Very
It
nice.
doesn't. A little piece of the world. Those are the two writing poems that I don't know if you want to jump in there, John, or keep going.
No, I think I listen, I think, I never hear too many poems about writing itself. So it's kind of a pleasure to hear you,
Yeah,
talk about that.
yeah, I didn't pick out many more of that. I try to stay away from it, but it's a difficult subject. Why do you write? I mean, that's what you've been talking about for the last 3 years here.
Yeah.
Why write at all? I think you should make every poet here answer that question.
Yeah, why they're right.
Ken,
I think
why
part
write
of it
at
is
all?
there's
We'll make it like
people I think are
a Zoom
compelled.
classroom.
Yeah, they're compelled to write. Yeah, there's something.
I
There's
tell my
something.
students, if I don't write, I'll die. And they
Yeah.
laugh, but that's the absolute truth. If I don't write, I'll die.
Yeah.
If I stop, I'll die. So
Nice. So you're going to do some on the bilingual?
yeah, why not?
But
This
let
was
me
a
ask you
brand.
this: when you had friends come to the house and you were
We didn't
inside
have
the
friends,
house,
but go ahead.
or you didn't have friends, well,
Greeks go with
I was
Greeks.
going to ask if
Greeks and
if you
Greeks.
taught Greek to your parents and then English to your friend in the house. I'm just wondering what your
That
friend
was
thought
funny,
about.
that was funny. I wish my cousin Gus was here from Florida. He was going to tune in because he would be able to explain it a little better. But I spoke strictly Greek with my mother. She didn't know English very well, very little. She learned, tops and eggs and milk and that kind of stuff, but not much. My father spoke perfect English because he was born here, but he had a Greek background where he went back and forth. So he also spoke perfect Greek, but he insisted on English between us. And my mother had no choice. She had to do Greek between us. Friends were Greeks. You ever see a
Yeah.
big fat Greek wedding? Greeks go with Greeks. That's the way it was. And American friends, well, yeah, some came around, but not many. But oftentimes in those days, they'd end up saying, the parents would say, "You can't go and hang around a foreigner's house." Come on.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a different world. Although now I don't know what it is now.
Yeah. Great. Good.
But
Good.
it was a mix, but it was definitely there was definitely a thing where you can speak Greek in the house, but when you go out, we want you to be American boy. You go walk down the street to school 19, you be American boy.
Yeah.
But in the
Okay.
end, I think it was positive because it gave me a different way to look at things, and it really taught me languages. I learned so much about language that I'm glad that it worked out that way. But so this poem is actually brand new, and it's going to be in my new book, which should be out this year. They're going to start promoting it in July, Finishing Line Press, and it's got a lot of Frost in it. Of course, I can't get away from. I mean, I have to say, Frost was the first poet that excited me. I was 9 years old when he read at Kennedy's inauguration. And from then on, when I memorized Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, I never lost him. So there's Frost references in it. There's definitely some Greek and some English. And it's called, the epigraph is, "I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads. Only English outside our home," my father would warn us as we left for our American school, already afraid that we, little foreign boys whose mother talked funny, would be singled out as different, dumber than our classmates. "We'll call you Perry, not Bundelis, because it sounds less foreign. Likely after the crooner of the decade, Cuomo, They crossed out the Greek on my birth certificate. My baptism in American waters scarred me from wandering too far in either direction. So I chose a path of shy and smart. Books and silence and more books, working to be more than a two-headed student of life and language. I waded deeper into the woods of my education, only to return home, feel guilt at those left behind. Parents long gone before I veered toward this fork, writing, speaking, reading, translating, and I took what appeared to be the sensible road. But what difference did it really make? Now, not sorry I learned to travel both, navigate the middle with balance and grace.
Nice, very nice.
Thank you. And that one makes me tear up a bit because my parents never saw any of this. They never saw the teaching, they never saw the writing, the reading, the books, never. They were long gone before that.
Did they really cross out your Greek name on the birth
Yeah,
certificate?
my birth certificate, my name is Pandelis, but it's too Greek. Can't go to school with Pandelis. So they tried to figure out a name with a P in it, and I guess it came from Perry Como. It had to be the 50s, right? What other Perry did you ever hear of?
Well, Perry Como or Perry Mason, one or the other.
Perry Mason, yeah, I didn't think of that. Okay. All right. This one I was thinking a lot. Now I have some photographs here. That's actually, I don't know how well you can see that, but that's my mother very young at her after her wedding or her honeymoon, on her honeymoon in Niagara Falls. And so I thought that was an itch. I blew up some of these photos. I thought it'd be a nicer background than a white door. But so I thought a lot about her voice and how the intonations of it and how they drove me. So one day I was watching a show on TV, a documentary about Mars, water on Mars, and it happened to be Mother's Day. So where does the poem come from? I stuck the two together, and there it is. So it's called Water on Mars. I remember when we used to talk mornings before I lifted off to school, imprints of your words on my mind, now dried up like water on Mars. Your voice a confident, foreign, robotic barking like the men in a ground control station as they direct the astronauts. Mine a staticky code, searching to find a common frequency with you. I didn't know what language to use. You always sounded so right. And when men landed on the moon, I wished it was me, bouncing light and free, an unfathomable distance between us and our home. These days, only your faint tracks. I barely hear the sound of water flowing, or you questioning why I'd want to travel anywhere that far in the first place.
Nice.
Well,
So
it's
Perry,
kinda
let's take a little
take a breather, a coffee
we're gonna
break.
take a little Q&A for Tim, Mike, Evelyn. We like to have a chance for the audience to ask some questions. Evelyn, Tim, and Mike, as I say, don't let the poet off the hook easy. Quiz him. We want to see Perry sweat before he turns older.
I will.
Anybody have anything they
Huh?
want to ask or share? Teresa, go ahead.
Oh, Perry, I'm happy to hear you mention Lee Young Lee. And it was interesting. I was reading went back into this book, Behind
Which
My
one is it?
Eyes.
Oh, I love that book.
Behind My Eyes. And one of my favorite poems in the whole world, My Favorite Kingdom, is in that book. So I just picked up Lee Young Lee last week, as a matter of
Oh.
fact. Also, what you said about the poem being the narrative and you like it to sound right or lyrical or sound good, I feel in rhythm and so forth is very, that point really is well taken. That's an interesting thing about workshops, because 10 different people in a workshop can have a different word that they think may be better, but often that might not be in the context of the rhythm or the sound of the
Oh,
poem.
yeah, yeah.
I have found.
It's not only the right
But
word, but it's the one that sounds good too. I mean, I'm very conscious of things as you all are as poets, alliteration and what sounds good. And maybe I'll change, wait, this word means the same thing, but this one sounds better with it
right.
in conjunction with it. I mean, Mike does that really well. Ken, everyone, they're really wonderful with that. And I'm very conscious of every single line, every single
Mhm.
word, every single song. It may not be the greatest in the whole world, but it's the best I can come up with. So
Irene, go ahead.
Harry, do you think teaching and having to critique the work of students has helped you to elevate that kind of consciousness about reading your own work?
has teaching helped?
Yeah,
Probably.
because you're not just reading for enjoyment, you are really reading
Yeah,
to
yeah.
direct
Well,
the poem.
there's that. I mean, it's much easier, if you send me a poem, it's much easier for me to critique your poem than for me to critique my own. That's for sure. There's like a distance and you can sit back and say, wait a minute, this line looks weird. Why would you leave a the out here?
Well, you're really
Yeah.
good at that. You've been
That
helpful
bugs
to
me,
me.
little things like that call me a the or an sticking up with that. That's an ugly line. No, I mean, it might be the right thing, but put it on the next line because it just looks ugly. So I love doing that. And that's easy. That's much easier than looking at my own. Because I
Well,
don't catch a lot of things.
I've tried to, I think to some degree, I've tried to internalize your voice.
Well,
Reading what I've written.
don't do it too much.
Also, well, this isn't really about poetry, so maybe it opens a whole.
Anything you want, that's okay.
Well, you mentioned that maybe it's worse now, this dual identity, but I'd like to think it's a lot better now that people are, look at the Italian Cultural Center, or, that we are turning back to appreciate those original names and languages. And I don't know.
You're always much more positive than I am, Irene. I think of a security guard at the synagogue door, but
Oh, well,
I can't remember that.
Yeah, there is that.
But I don't want to dwell on that, but it's still, you're different, and that's okay. It's okay to be different. That's
Yeah, when I was in third grade, I went to play at a friend's house, a little boy, and he told his mom, "This is Irene. She's not American. She's Jewish."
Oh, boy.
Uh.
Oh, boy.
Well, I had a guy, since you're sharing stories, I went to a HEPA meeting. It's the male group in the Greek church last night. And I thought was going to join and help out. And one guy they were sitting out there talking politics. And one guy was talking about people crossing the border. And he said, I don't mind that so much. It doesn't bother me so much because at least they're Christians.
Oh, gosh.
And I said, okay, well,
And
I think
that's
I
a whole
got,
nother kettle of fish.
I gotta go now. Sorry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I didn't realize until not that long ago, Perry, how many Greeks are very conservative about things like that, or have a lot of prejudices. My uncle did. So it's not that it's foreign to me as I was growing up, but I feel like I was often around people that were more open-minded. But I'm in a different situation than you because my mother and father were born in the United States.
Okay, they
It's
both
like grandparents' generation that was, from Greece or actually from Asia Minor.
Mhm.
So, but I see some of your stories and stories I've heard from my mother, like being embarrassed in kindergarten when she used the word valiza for suitcase, because that's the only word she
Your
knew for
valiza.
suitcase. And then she was, yeah, oh, yeah, I mean, the translation would be valise or whatever, but, you know, but she's 92 and still tells that story. That shows you how humiliated she was in that moment.
Well, that reminds again of the Greek wedding movie, right? Where she goes to school and she's got moussaka, and all the other
Yes.
kids have like tuna sandwiches, and they go,
Right.
"What are you eating? Moussaka?"
Right. By the way, there's another episode of that movie coming out in September.
I
I
heard
hear.
that too. I would see it just to see the view of Greece.
Me too.
What else you want to
Okay.
know? Anything?
I think let's move on to part 2. We'll have another,
Okay.
if
Good, 'cause
Perry
I'm-
doesn't go into the early years of his life again, we'll have time for more
Yeah,
questions.
yeah.
So
Well,
Evelyn, get a question going. Mike, don't let him ease into his birthday. Come on. Tim, come on.
he's in. You can ask me anything. I guess about these photos if you like. They're pretty cool. Or maybe I'll read a poem that I wrote about one of the photos
Yeah.
later, because I've written about them.
Please.
Well, this one, these are about aging, of course, and getting older. And I was hoping she would show, but Julie Danho, who read for the
Yeah.
series, and she with her husband,
Yeah.
you had a line. I told her I stole her line. I steal everybody's line, so be careful. Whatever you just said, I wrote it down, and you're gonna see it in a poem next week. But she used the line, "Now, how much time have I wasted seeking perfection?" And I told her I was going to use that poem that line because I thought it was very cool. How much time have I wasted seeking perfection? Loss of time and loss of love. Now we meet at this marker, a place we fear may not matter. How much hard work lies beyond? We may reach and stretch forever. Is this the couplet we strive for? They were beautiful in life, and in death they were not divided. Eating for the sake of eating, kissing by instinct and searching. Is it wasted, this life of constant typing, still walking the night, fingers cramped? I don't care to live in your everyday world. Dear, accept these years, my imperfect gift.
Nice.
Let's see, what else we have here? Aging. A while back, I wrote a poem and it sort of likened the aging process to method acting. And so this is
I love it.
called method aging. It seems I've mastered posing, the deceitful practice of photography, and staying in front of the artist's keen eye. I've also mastered speech, grasped nuances of despair, and the necessary arm flailing to make myself believable. No worries about aging, no fears about splicing scenes into another world. I'm left with only one question. When will your eyes lift, film me as old? I never expected to look this way, neck rough and snake-like, legs hairless as a sphinx cat. Does love only see love through a special Shakespearean lens? Now I realize that's one question, much too hard to frame, gently set aside for another shoot.
Nice.
Hey, Perry,
Hey, what?
what was that?
Sorry.
What was that line about splicing scenes?
Let me see there, Mike. No worries about aging, no fears about splicing scenes into another world. I'm left with only one question. When will your eyes lift, film me as old?
Okay. I might steal that line.
Yeah, that's okay. Just put next to it. Stolen from.
Yeah, okay.
That's okay. If everything's fair game to me. whatever gets you going in writing.
Yeah, Perry, next year we'll have a poetry police person on the show. Just to, maintain
To make sure not stealing.
journalistic integrity. Yeah, we'll have to,
Well, yeah, I'm gonna say too late, because I stole for just about everybody here. So
yeah.
you're too late. All these wonderful
Yeah.
poets, I always listen
Yeah.
to them and steal. Nobody writes in a vacuum.
Yeah.
You have to listen to what people are doing around you. This one, I always try to write a birthday poem. I did this one, and the whole idea of it was based on the movie Benjamin Button, The Curious Cage.
Oh,
of
yeah.
Benjamin Button, which I love.
Oh.
That movie. I could watch it 20 times. And the idea is, right, that the guy ages from, he's born old and he ages and gets younger and dies when he's young, and he ages in reverse. And so I thought that's a pretty good idea. It's a wonderful movie, even if you don't like Brad Pitt. But and Benjamin Button says in the movie, our lives are defined by opportunities, even the ones we miss. 70 and counting. Maybe like Benjamin Button, I will age backward, a being growing younger as he moves ahead in his life, inch by inch. I walk towards a mother's voice calling me home for dinner after riding a bike. Father's bark when I pushed him too far. In this fog, I wander, following their ghostly voices in the night, knowing in my right mind they are gone. But in my left, wishing for one more miracle. But miracles happen to mortals who only play by the rules, discern too much, believe in both taken and missed opportunities. Maybe like Benjamin, I will age as I crawl closer to the beginning, stop gracefully when I reach the start.
Nice.
If you haven't seen it, you have to see the movie. Should I
Yeah,
go? Because
I've
I got one for John here.
Oh, boy.
I
This is
remember in the
called the antique poetry show. No.
I remember in the beginning, we talked about the Palmer method.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And-
Palmer penmanship. Yep.
And so I wrote this poem about that. If people don't know or do know what the Palmer method is, it was the way that they taught probably in the 50s and 60s. It taught penmanship to students.
Yeah.
And it was basically, you drew the circles,
Yeah.
forward,
Yeah.
forward
Cursive
circles,
writing. Yeah.
forward circles, forward circles,
Yeah.
forward circles. Now, think about how unfair that was to a lefty like me. You got a right-handed desk, you're hunched around this way and you're going this way. They should have been doing,
Hey, you
they
had
should
a-
have been doing them this way. And that wasn't fair, but it was a right-handed world. And it's gotten a little better, but it's still a right-handed world. But so anyway, I wrote this poem for you, John. Palmer method. Leaning forward in our seats, wrapped around right-handed desks, we smudged our hands in our own ink, trying so hard to create ovals like all the acceptable kids who were born slanted to the right. We lefties were the oddballs, struggling for acceptance from our peers and teachers, afraid to unleash demons that might lurk inside, end up on the wrong side of God, or even worse, to be left behind. It was hard enough I was looked at as a foreigner with a mother who talked funny, a house that always smelled of grease, full of people who lived in two very split worlds, judged by the majority in their right minds. So I learned to create silly circles, at least look as if I was concentrating, waited for times to change, outlooks to bend back the other way, people to accept us as special scriveners who could use both hands equally. Prove to them left is just unique and really all is right with our world.
Nice. Yeah.
That
Thank you.
That was our dilemma. Now of course I'm happy because I'm one of the few people that can use both hands. Now you righties, most of your left hand is just sort of dangling there like a a macaroni. But
Well, Perry, when I went to Catholic school for the first 5 years, I don't know what grade it was, but we had half an hour of penmanship every day. And if your small letters crossed the midline, there was usually a ruler that became visible
yeah,
from to remind you to
oh
do
yeah,
not
yeah.
color outside the lines.
Well, it started out as a religious thing, right? Nobody
Yeah.
wants to be like on the left side of God.
Yeah.
So you were evil, and then it just kind of grew from there. It was really silly, but that's where it came from.
Yeah.
So,
Nice. But Perry, before we, because we're kind of at the last 15 minutes,
Mhm.
just tell us more about your love of Frost. What
Oh God.
tell us about that, or
Well,
share with us.
it started very, very young. Like I said, 9, 10 years old, and I just love I think he's a master of sound, rhyme, meter. I mean, think about poems like I could go on and on about Frost, but think about poems like just something simple like Stopping by Woods, which is the only poem I've ever memorized in my life. I can't even memorize my own poems, but that one is stuck in my head. But it's so perfect, 8 syllables each line, iambic, tetrameter. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful sound. And the images he creates, I mean, he's just too perfect, too perfect. It's funny you say that because I marked a page here where Leon Lee is talking about, and I'll tell you something about Leon Lee when I met him once, Teresa. Frost, he's talking about how great he thinks Frost poems are. And he says, people read Frost and say that he didn't make sense, that he's lawless. But he heard another law, a higher law. I don't give a shit about man-made laws. That's not what I'm talking about. I don't care about good and evil modes of behavior. I'm talking about adhering to the same things the leaves adhere to, earth, the sun, something so elemental. The rest is chatter. And I thought, there it is right there. If you're going to write about leaves, write about leaves. But that, we're trying to write to go above things, above the mundane. And I think Frost achieved that. Just I don't know. I just always go back to him. Birches, I think, is one of the greatest poems I've ever read. If I wrote that, I would quit right away. That would be it. Just so meticulous about everything. But back to Leon Lee, I'm sorry. I met him once about 15 years ago at Buffalo Sam. Anzie Baird brought him there. I think it was 15 years. He brought him as one of the visiting poets, and my daughter was going there. So I went and saw him. Besides a wonderful poet, what a nice guy. I mean, just a really nice guy. They had a little coffee thing afterwards, and I sat and talked to him. Very shy, very humble, which I didn't know if I expected, but just really, really nice guy. So that's my little bit of a Leon Lee story.
Well, that was great to be able to meet him. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So there are a few more poems on aging.
Not
Or-
aging so much, but I think I read all of. I mean, I can certainly find more. But
No. Just
I could
just
read-
go with what you were going to do.
Well, I was thought maybe I would read one about these photographs, or one of these
Yeah.
photographs.
That'd be great.
I don't know if I've done this before, but it might be fun. I don't know how clearly you can see them. Oh, I could tell you quickly. What I used to do in my classes, I would show them the students this photograph, and I would say, write a story about it. And of course, they'd come up with stuff like, little mafia family, and all this kind of stuff, and some ridiculous stuff, and that was okay. But in truth, this is probably 1959. It's me and my dad and my brother. And so I always thought there's so much going on in that photograph that I could talk about it forever. But to me, it's the donning of the hats. I mean, we didn't stand around dressed like that with hats. It had to be a special occasion. How do you remember the special occasion? You can't. That's 1959. If you can remember that, then tell me. You're a better man than I. The other thing interesting to me is the cigarette that he never let go of his whole life, and the touch, which was very rare. So the spacing of the people, it's just it's so posed and contrived to me when I look at it, no matter what the time was. So I thought that's a cool photo. Just very quickly then, so if you go here and then you go over here, that's my dad. And I wrote my first sonnet about little soldier off to school or something, and his parents and his brother. So that's 1919. And as I said, this was my mother pretending she was a movie queen or something, but she certainly was not. But anyway, so I wrote a poem about this. And it's called Close But Not Touching. Reluctantly, you swear this is the last time you'll take out that faded photograph, study the three figures, the hats they're wearing, how close they are to touching. Preparing to drive off to church or some other unlikely place. For a time, it drove you crazy trying to imagine who might have taken it in 1959, what the occasion was, whose shadow stretched out over the two boys and the man in the photo. The obscured figure probably no longer a part of this world. It must have been a woman, a doting mother, leaning into a manly light. Most likely she had on a worn house coat, stepped out onto the porch for a moment, snapped her men in their matching Sunday headwear. She ducked back into their asbestos shingled home on the east side to clean the kitchen and plan their next meal. The males returned after lunch, ignoring her orderliness. You wonder where these two boys, one man, one woman, have gone, how long they may have stood together in the morning light, close but not touching. Perhaps that's not the point at all, not why you visit and revisit the photo. It may just be there is some intimacy you miss, along with the ritual in the donning of the hats. So that's it. Three little mafia people.
Yeah, nice. You look like you're wearing a new suit there, Perry.
Yeah, but you don't know what I have on the bottom. I could have my pajamas. You don't know that.
Oh, boy.
Harry, did you write one for the first picture? The one with your grandparents?
No, not that one. No, although there's a sonnet that mentions my dad as a little soldier, but I don't think I have it here. It was like the first sonnet. I went to Skidmore College and wrote sonnets. The first writing conference I ever went with Henri Cole, and I wrote that sonnet about him, and that was pretty decent. I'd never written a sonnet before.
Nice.
But I don't have that one here. I don't know where it went.
And are all those poems that you've been reading since the time that you mentioned your new book, are they all from the new book, or were you moving around?
Oh, no, they were, several were from my first book, and then there was one from a chapbook called Laundry, and then there was one called The Poet Upstairs. So I was going all around it. Really, I think the only one was the one in the new book was The Two Roads.
Okay.
And that they were saying, I don't know, maybe November or something.
So Perry, let's just
Perry.
pause just for another
sorry.
minute or two. Does anybody have any other questions? Teresa?
Well, I just wanted to say that the photographs, Perry, and the lighting you're doing today are really good. I put that in the chat. They're coming across very well.
You know what?
And
Well,
another-
better
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
took your advice. First of all, it's a cloudy day. And everything
Yes,
shines through these things, so it's a kind of a crappy day. And then I turned everything else off and I just have these two little lamps on the side. So you were right, although it's not perfect, but it's better than before.
It looks good. I remembered the middle photograph is the cover of one of your early chapbooks.
I think it is. It's on there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I sort of lost track. Yeah.
Well, they look good there on the white. Very good.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Yeah,
Ken?
Perry, I'm curious, every poem builds and gets constructed in its own particular way. But just in general, the voicing of the poem as it's being constructed and getting it to, its final form. Could you, speaking it aloud, there's the part in which the inner voice is part of the constructing, and then there's the part in which presumably keeps weaving in and out with your voicing it out loud. Could you talk about that process with yourself, how that interacts and how that brings you to the final version?
I'm not exactly sure what he's saying, or how my
Well, we were talking about
self
the
interacts.
we were talking about the music and the sound of poetry earlier. And, one could write a poem and just never, voice it out loud. It could just be on the page
Okay.
and in your head. So I'm wondering, in your personal process, how critical is it in hearing the poem yourself speak it out loud as you're working on and advancing it, to where you are satisfied it's got that music and that form and that shape
Oh,
and that,
okay.
the rhythm. So, yeah.
Well, I know for me, I need to hear it hit the air. I always told that to my students. I say, you don't know if a poem works unless you hear it hit the air. And I started doing readings in 20 years ago, just as a part of revision. I didn't know if it was right. So when you read it out loud, right, you hear that clunker and you go, wait a minute, that's not the right word there. And I think you all feel like that. And so I use it. I have to hear it in my voice, or even somebody else reading it if you have someone like that. But yeah, it's crucial it's a different thing sitting there and writing on the page and not hearing it. I think you need to hear it. So I'm very conscious of reading them, and I read them out loud, just like I do. Oh God, believe it or not, I read all comp papers out loud. I don't know if you do, Irene, but I read them. When I get to a passage or a paragraph, I read it out loud. I go, wait a minute, what's missing in this paragraph? What's wrong here in the rhythm? What doesn't sound right? So in that sense, I think you have to hear it. And that's one of the reasons I keep doing readings, besides the fact that I love doing it and I love sharing with talented people. And it was 1 hour that I didn't think about my damn toothache. I didn't think once about my toothache. I thought about other aches, but not my toothache. So where do you get that? Where do you get that kind of entertainment?
Do you record them when you read them out loud? Like
I
using-
don't. No, I don't. I just do it and let fly. And or else I watch a recording of. Did you ever watch a recording of yourself? I hate watching recordings of myself. I always
Oh,
say,
yeah, I've recorded many recordings, yeah.
who is that person? And I don't know, but I do enjoy the live moments. I mean, I did a lot of Zoom readings during COVID, but I
Mhm.
still really enjoy real people. You could see their
Hey,
faces.
Perry. Perry, read one more poem for us, then we have to close out for today.
Well, what kind of poem would you like? You get to choose.
Well, after you master the
Mother,
Palmer
father,
penmanship,
love. Want to love? poem?
whatever works, whatever.
Jesus.
Read something new that you're really excited about.
He moved. So-
Excellent idea.
Oh, no, you have to wait and buy the book. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay,
That's
read
not-
something old you're not happy with poetry.
Those aren't available yet, so yeah, I'll read the title poem of this since I have
Yeah.
it in my hand. Okay, well, we're gonna find it. Wait, don't go away. I guess I should have had more prepared. Yeah, I'm gonna read a letter from Idra. I haven't read that ever, I don't think. I'll read this because Ken was just in Greece a while ago. Poem about Idra. Did you go to Hydra or you did go, right? No, you didn't go?
No, but and I have a feeling in about 5 seconds I will be there.
Okay. A letter from Hydra. It's a little island near Athens. I told you in a letter, my last attempt, I would have paddled anywhere to follow you. Corfu, Milan, Barcelona, Brindisi, until that one awful ocean crossing. You traveled first class and left me sleeping catastroma on the deck. No money and no idea where I would eat next. Soaked and alone the next morning, the sea's curtain teased and parted. Your cabin was empty. Hydra became my escape, my excuse, the stop where I would cut loose from you. I justified my move, believing Kazantzakis and Cohen both wrote there once, in love. I needed to see how these poets survived. Nikos with no Bubulina, Leonard without Marianne. Then I ignored you and writing for 25 years. These days, I need something real, or another life I might interpret as real. I ignore the whispers, the widow's looks, the desire to sail anywhere else in the Kykladas. I'm content to spend my days under the burning eye of this Grecian Ilios. Buoyed on my back in the salty Mediterranean, I find myself writing again. That's an old one.
Well, very good. Thank you very much, Perry, for
Thank you for all coming and spending
Thank you,
your
man.
lunch time. We
Oh,
have some
great,
good ones
great.
coming up too. I know we have Irene and Mike.
Yeah,
I
we
don't
got the
know.
whole. Yeah, Wendy, we're gonna rename this the Buffalo Stockbridge Library Program I think we have more Buffalo writers than anywhere else. So I don't know, Kathy. We got a lot of Virginia writers too. So we'll have to be, the Buffalo, Virginia, Stockbridge, east of the Mississippi Poetry Hour. Yeah.